Eileen Collins fantasized about flying when she was a young girl. As a former astronaut, two-time space shuttle commander, wife, and mother, her dreams have come true. Although her work at NASA has come to an end, her mission as an ambassador for the space program has just begun. I caught up with Eileen at the Johnson Space Center in Houston and found that she's very down to earth. I personally cannot believe that I'm sitting here. I've never been to NASA, and this is a place that you've spent the last 16 years at.
Yeah, that's right. 16 years ago in July, I came here as an astronaut candidate in training. In fact, our first class was here in this building. Was a class of 23. We had 5 women and 17 men. And I'm still thinking to this day that I'd like to see more women apply to the program, because the jobs are available here for women if you want to be astronauts or even engineers or flight directors, flight controllers. There's a wealth of jobs in the space program. It's a very exciting place to be, and it's just been a great 16 years.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand.
Let's go back to when you were more focused on yourself as a child. You were a child who fantasized about flying, and you grew up in Elmira, New York, which is the flying capital of the United States, I think. What was it that fascinated you so much about flight?
Well, Elmira, New York has the National Soaring Museum, and it's actually called the soaring capital of the nation. It used to be the soaring capital of the world, but I think Czechoslovakia took that away from us. But when I attended summer camp as a student, I'd watch the gliders fly overhead. And I wanted to fly in those gliders someday. And I wanted to fly an airplane. But the closest I could get to that was reading books. And yes, I did read about women pilots, but I also read about all kinds of pilots, especially military, because I wanted to be a military pilot. For whatever reason, it just seemed that the flying was so much more exciting. I liked the idea of being in a squadron and having the camaraderie of, being with a group of pilots and having a mission. So it didn't stop me that all the pilots in the military were men. And it wasn't until 1976 that women were allowed in the military to fly. My timing was perfect because I graduated from college in 1978, so I was able to apply and become part of this dream that I had had.
But you started to finance your own dream when you were a teenager. I read that you raised $1,000 to pay for your first flying lessons. I mean, you were actively pursuing your dream.
You see, what I did was I worked at a catalog showroom, and I worked at a pizza restaurant, minimum wage, and I saved up the money over 2 years' time. And once I had $1,000, which was about the cost to get a license, I went up to the local airport. This was the hardest thing I had ever done, because shy little me, and I thought, what are my friends going to think of me? What are my parents going to think of me? They're going to think I'm crazy. I don't know any women that fly airplanes, but that's what I want to do.
There's our first woman pilot, Eileen Collins. And on she goes. Go for main engine start. Main engine's now started. Main engine's up and running. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery on a mission to prepare for the next era of world cooperation in space.
Hello, program Houston. Roger, roll, Discovery.
Houston is now controlling Discovery on its 20th trip to space. Discovery rolling on course for an orbit with the Mir space station. Mir currently half a world away above the Indian Ocean.
Eileen, in 1998, then President Clinton appointed you as commander of the shuttle Columbia, which was going to make its journey into space in the next few years. And a lot of feminists said, oh, this is a giant leap for womankind. How did you feel about that and the fact that women were sort of saying, this is a first, we're going to make a big deal about it?
Well, I tried not to even think about it from that angle. I had been given a very important responsibility. The Space Shuttle Columbia was going to be my baby. I had my crew, and I had the Chandra X-ray Observatory, which is kind of a sister to the Hubble Space Telescope, which we took up on that mission. And it was so important to me that we fly a safe mission successful mission, that my crew worked very, very well together, that we didn't make mistakes, and that we would be able to come back from the flight and say it was 100% successful. That was all I focused on. I knew there were things going on in the rest of the world, people talking about, oh, woman commander, it's about time that this has happened, why didn't it happen before this, and there was a lot of that talk going on. I just disregarded it because that to me was a distraction. If I got too involved with that, I was afraid that maybe it might be hurting the mission. After the mission was over, I started thinking about the woman commander and the fact that, yes, it was important that this finally happened. It didn't have to be me. It's just important that a woman did this. And I think that being an astronaut has made me a better person, and it's certainly made me a lot more humble. And this is the hatch right here.
Wow.
A mock-up of the hatch. And as you can see, this,
I'll never get to touch it.
so you can see as the crew goes out here, they come out, there's nothing below them. And you just get a feeling that I'm going to fall down to the earth. Well, of course you're not going to fall because you're in orbit and
You're weightless.
it's microgravity. You're basically weightless. So as you come out, you just, you're tethered on a string, so you're not going to float away. You just hold on and you come out, and then you go directly to your work site, which is normally on the side of the crew lock or down along to the airlock, and then you go on to do your mission from there.
Well, you said, this is my baby. It must have broken your heart then in February 2003 when the shuttle, actually the Columbia, blew up and you lost so many people. I can't imagine what you were thinking when that happened.
Well, I look at it now as it's a scar on me, on the space program, on all of us. It was just a terrible tragedy, and it's even hard for me to talk about it today. And we at NASA need to continue to remind ourselves of all the details in the Columbia story, the whole story of that mission, as well as the Challenger. And I know it's painful, but we've got to do that because we've got to prevent repeating these mistakes. And this doesn't just apply to NASA. It applies, to other areas of my life. It applies to other jobs. It applies to, families, things like listening, things like keeping your my way may not be the right way. Maybe I ought to listen to what somebody else says. They might have the right way.
You have two children. You have a little girl and a boy. They're 5 and 10. But they must think, that you are the coolest mom ever. I mean, how many kids have moms who work at NASA? Kids want to be Power Rangers or Superman, and you're wearing a shuttle suit.
Well, it's pretty funny. It changes from one day to the next. When I talked at my daughter's school last year, and she thought that was just great that Mom is going to come in and show all my space food and show my space movie. But yet for me to hold her hand and walk into school, oh, we can't do that. That's embarrassing to have Mommy hold your hand. So,
it goes both ways.
It comes and goes,
it?
yeah. I think I'm a better shuttle commander because I've been a mother. And it sounds silly, but some of the principles are the same. I'm teaching my children patience, respect, hard work, teamwork, getting along with others. These are things that a leader, most of the people I work with at NASA are like that.
Your husband is also a pilot. And again, I've interviewed other women who have a husband in the same profession, and they say they really guard against pillow talk that has to do with the work that they do. Is that true for you too? And how do you keep your work separate from your personal life?
Well, I do talk to my husband about what I do in my job, or when I was training for my missions, I would talk to him about, what we're going to do here and there. And I found his opinion very valuable, and I think it helped our relationship. It did, because that's both, it's what we love, is flying. And he'll tell me about what he does on his missions, and I'll say, well, I'll throw in my comment here and there. I think it's the bond that brought us together, flying, and it's one that keeps us together. Although even if I wasn't flying, we have just a great marriage that has made it through a lot of stresses. I mean, we've had a lot of stresses with my 4 missions, and all the traveling that I've had to do, and all the traveling that he's had to do. We've hung together through it all, and I think, the flying and the fact that he understands my career and I understand his has really helped.
There has been a lot of media lately devoted to the fact that women don't have the brains for math and science, or that they're not engineered for that particularly. Lawrence Summers, who was the head of Harvard a year or so ago, made that statement, and it caused a huge stink. What's your take on all
Well,
that?
I totally reject that. I mean, look at growing up, look at all the women math teachers that you had, the women science teachers. Look at around here at Johnson Space Center, the smart engineers that we have. Look at our EVA, our spacewalk section. Half of the engineers are women. You know, I don't know if someone's in a university, how in touch are they with what's going on in the rest of the world? Now, that may have been his perspective, and I think everybody has their right to their opinion, but I think people have overreacted to it. I think we need to go out and take a look at what's happening at a place like NASA. You know, NASA is getting ready to build a spacecraft that will take us back to the moon, not just to do short visits, but to stay there and build research stations. So I'm trying to get up to speed on what happened in the Apollo program by reading everything I can get a hold of on the Apollo program. Now, I'm probably not going to go myself. Although I think I'm young enough to go, I think I'm still physically fit and smart enough to go. The right thing to do is to send the younger guys and gals. And for the young gals out there that are listening, I'd like them to know that no woman has ever walked on the moon yet.
So here's an opportunity.
There's been 12 men that visited there in the late 60s and early 70s. So we need to have our first woman to the moon, and we need to have our first person on Mars.
You have received many numerous accolades, honorary degrees. You've had a song written about you by Judy Collins. Annie Leibovitz has taken your picture. You've been an icon among women. Is there anything that stands out for you with all of these events?
Well, you know, all the things you just mentioned and more, it's not me. It's the astronaut. It's the first woman shuttle commander. It could have been somebody else. I don't think of it as this is me, Eileen Collins, who's done all this. I am the person that was born at this point in history, in this city. This series of events happened to me. The choices that I made as I went along got me here. And I'm a representative of people of this country as I fly in space. And that's the way I think about it. And I think that's what keeps me being the way I want to be, which is I want to be down to earth, I want to be humble, and I just keep working on it.
Have you ever taken your daughter to work? A woman named Nell Merlino came up with that concept in 1993. Today, her nonprofit organization, Count Me In, focuses on financial independence for women. I caught up with her at Stewart Country Day School in Princeton, New Jersey, to find out how her early education influenced her career. Nell, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me.
We are back in an old haunt. We are in the headmistress's house at Stewart Country Day School, where both you and I went to high school. What does this bring up for you, these old haunts?
What it brings up for me more than anything, I wasn't a particularly good student in high school, and they really helped me. So I have a great appreciation for this place because I think they so appreciated me and what my sort of skills and limitations were at that time. So I always have just lovely memories coming here.
Now, your dad was a state senator from New Jersey, so the political interest came probably easily to you, or not?
It's a family business. Politics is a family business. And he was very upset with me at the time because I did get arrested a number of times during anti-war protests. But that all changed as I got older, and I think he got older because he certainly changed his mind about what was going on then. But yeah, I've been involved. I mean, I've worked in a number of presidential campaigns. I certainly got that gene and bug from him. And my mother. My mother was always active politically as well, so yeah.
I've looked at your resume, which is amazingly impressive, and I say, gosh, here's a woman who worked in politics, in state government. She worked in human services, and then you went to work for the foundation, and you created something called Bring Our Daughters to Work Day. What inspired you to do that? And did you even imagine the effect it would have?
What inspired me to create Take Our Daughters to Work Day was my father's retirement dinner. I had been to visit people at the Ms. Foundation, and they gave me literally a carton of research about girls' loss of self-esteem as they reach adolescence. And went to my father's retirement dinner and saw all these people that I had met in my life who had informed so much of who I became, and thought, what would happen if every girl got a chance to see what their parents or one of their parents did outside of the house? And I literally went home from that dinner and wrote 5 pages, which continues to happen every year. And in terms of the response, I knew it was in April of 1993. In February of 93, in 1 week, we got an editorial in People magazine, and the editor of Esquire wrote the most incredible piece about why he thought men should do this. I remember that day knowing that this was going to be big. I did not know how big until about a year later.
It hit a chord.
It really did.
Did you just get goosebumps? Did you?
I still do, talking about it.
If boys and girls work together, we can have peace in the world. Okay? That's good. And women have struggled very hard for many years, and now look where they are now. We're trying to do more stuff, like become a president.
And now it's 13 years later.
And I now have the extraordinary pleasure of meeting young women who chose their careers based on what they saw on maybe the first Take Our Daughters to Work Day that they participated in, and that is stunning to me.
And so what was next? What was it? Count Me In? Let's talk about some of your companies and endeavors.
What was next was I focused on certainly women and girls in most of my work in my company, and created Count Me In. Count Me In is the now the leading national not-for-profit that makes microloans available to women online, and business resources and educational material for women to start and grow micro businesses, and we now help them go from micro to millions even in their business growth.
And what's your success rate?
Wow, in terms of the women we make loans to, 90% of them pay us back. We've made loans in all 50 states. We've made close to 1,000 loans by now, and just have extraordinary stories. And we now have this new great effort called Make Mine $1 Million business, where women, some who got microloans from Count Me In of like $5,000 to start their businesses, are now knocking on the door of $1 million. So it's very, very exciting, very challenging.
What are some of your favorite business stories from these women, ones who got started?
There's so many great ones. We have women who do doggy daycare, who who have you can drop your dog off and come back and pick it up at the end of the day, which I think is a lot of fun. And also great businesses. There's a woman who she's sort of like a home shopper for people in prison. She had a child in prison, and every time she went to visit him, the things that she was taking him would be confiscated because they weren't, right by the regulations that they had. So she learned the regulations.
Smart.
And would wait at the buses where people in New York go upstate to visit their loved ones in jail, and she would sell what it was that was okay. And it was, things had to be shrink wrapped. There were all kinds of rules, and she knew all the rules, so that you would get, like you duty free, when you get your bag, she would have your bag with, if you were giving them a sweatshirt and some toiletries or whatever. She has a great business. It's called Prison Help. It's a fabulous business, but there is a range of them.
Now with more women in the financial markets, on television talking about money, do you think there's a shift in how young women view money today? And do you think, along with that, young men view young women and their working capabilities differently?
I don't think it's changed enough. I think we continue to see, I know we get thousands of loan applications from women, and not enough of them say that one of the reasons they're going into business is to make money.
What do they say?
Oh, it is about finding the right situation for them. It's about, life-work balance. They have a product or a service they want to deliver to more people. The making the money is not front and center. And I think we need to be conscious that that's one of the things that we're doing.
And that's one of the reasons you go into business, is to make money.
Yes. I still think there's some sense that that's just not something we're supposed to articulate. And so I think it's important that the more women who can articulate that and say it, and the more we can encourage each other to talk about money and talk about how we're going to sort it out and what we're going to do with our money.
How we're going to handle our money.
Yes, yes.
How we're going to educate ourselves.
And educate our daughters about it.
Your unconditional love, kind of love I deserve, the kind I want to return. Give me.
Now, you have a different relationship then with your husband than possibly a lot of women watching this show would have in terms of how you handle your finances. How did that impact your relationship, or did it? Was it just always assumed that this is how you would do it?
I met my husband on a blind date, and we were sitting in a restaurant. It was lunchtime. And
when was this? This
was in 1992. And halfway through the lunch, he said he believed in fate. And I thought, oh, what's he talking about? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, fate, F-A-T-E, full and total equality. Yeah, that was my reaction. I said, And
kind of surprised you.
It was, I'd never heard anybody say that, and the way he sort of spelled it out. And my impression of him was either he'd done some research on me or knew exactly what he ought to say to me. But it came to be very clear to me that he really did believe that. Because even in the experience of walking into the restaurant, he had chosen the restaurant. As I walked into the restaurant, I met people that I knew on the way in. And I was worried about saying hello to them because I was a little late and I didn't, but he enjoyed watching what I was doing. And I remember coming out of that situation saying, if he's okay with that,
maybe he's okay.
Maybe he's okay. And the fact that he believed in fate, and he also said to me that, because it was the height of the presidential primary. It was May of 1992. And he said to me, and he said, Hillary Clinton's going to be president in 2008. I remember thinking, who is this guy? And he's not involved in politics. He's just, he's a very informed citizen. I remember thinking, whoa. So, we went out again the next day. We got married 2 years later. it was, but he's always been extremely supportive and, in fact, lives this. And I see it with his daughter, who's recently entered the workforce, and what he says to her and how he encourages her. Yeah.
So we have a new wave of warrior coming in the future. What made you so interested in women gaining financial independence?
I think it's the most important thing that we do in terms of being able to take care of ourselves. And it's not about us doing that and staying by ourselves. If you want to be by yourself, that's great because you have the money. But to be in a relationship and to be in it because you want to be with the person and not because you need to be with the person.
I'm very grateful to the Miss Foundation and Nell Merlino, who thought up Take Our Daughters to Work Day.
Do you ever wonder about the choices women have made throughout history? I have some stories for you. Henrietta Swan Leavitt was one of America's first female astronomers at a time when men frowned on women working in scientific fields. Even an illness that left Henrietta deaf didn't discourage her from pursuing her career. She volunteered at the Harvard Observatory and after 7 years was appointed to a staff position at a salary of 30 cents an hour. The discoveries Henrietta made about stars provided an important yardstick for measuring distances in the universe and helped other astronomers, such as Edwin Hubble, make their own groundbreaking discoveries. Our efforts are often a stepping stone for the work of others. Looking at the big picture can give you the courage to persevere. We have all kinds of interesting information to share with you on our website, balancingyourlifeonline.com. I'm Ellen Susman. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.
Balancing Your Life is made possible in part by the Lee and Joseph D. Jamail Foundation, J.P. Morgan Chase, Sarah S. Morgan, Fred Barron, and Lisa Blue. Additional funding is provided by the Laurie M. Tisch Foundation, Andrea and Jim Gordon, Goldman Sachs, Amagi Bank, I.W. Marks Jewelers, Terrell W. and Joan B. Oxford, and others. For a complete list, visit us at www.balancingyourlifeonline.com.